this is my prime example of people that's puppet masters trying to control the narrative.
It now appears if she wants to run for supervisor again, it will have to be as a write-in.
The story of Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor of Dothan, Illinois, has taken a dramatic and unexpected turn. Once hailed as a political force to be reckoned with, Henyard's empire now appears to be crumbling at an alarming pace, leaving even her most loyal supporters stunned by the rapid unraveling of her career. From accusations of lavish spending to questionable decisions and leadership, the scandals surrounding her are stacking up, casting a shadow over what seemed like an unstoppable rise. What began as a promising political career has now become a spectacle of controversy and chaos. Allegations of extravagant spending, including questionable use of public funds, have sparked outrage among residents and watchdog groups alike. This, coupled with a growing list of poor decisions in office and accusations of corruption, has sparked an outcry from the community, once supportive, but now increasingly disillusioned by her leadership. As the situation escalates, Tiffany Henyard's once tight grip on power is slipping, and even those who were once her most vocal defenders are beginning to distance themselves. The swift fall from grace is both shocking and unprecedented, leaving many to wonder if this is the dramatic collapse of one of Illinois' most controversial figures. With every new revelation, the pressure mounts. The political landscape in Dothan is shifting, and Henyard's empire is teetering on the brink of collapse. Will she be able to regain control, or is this the beginning of the end for her reign? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the roller coaster ride is far from over. Hold on tight, as this saga continues to unfold at a breathtaking speed. The most devastating blow to Tiffany Henyard's political career came during a historic and contentious Democratic caucus in Warren Township, an event that will be remembered for years to come. For the first time in decades, the local Democratic Party chose to hold a caucus instead of a primary election to select its nominees, and the stakes could not have been higher. Henyard, who currently served as both the mayor of Dalton and the supervisor of Warren Township, had her sights set on securing a spot on the 2024 election ballot. However, in a dramatic twist, things did not go as planned. Henyard's name was completely barred from the ballot, a move that shook the political landscape to its core. The reason? Henyard failed to meet the essential requirement of presenting a full slate of candidates for the election, including key positions like assessor and trustees. Without a certified assessor on her ticket, her candidacy was deemed invalid, effectively ending her bid for re-election. The news of her disqualification sent shockwaves through her camp, with Henyard furious and accusing her opponents of foul play. It was a blow she had not seen coming, and her frustrations were palpable as she railed against what she claimed was a political maneuver to undermine her chances. The caucus itself was nothing short of chaotic, as hundreds of people braved the bitter cold to gather at the Homewood Flossmoor Park District Auditorium for a political showdown that was anything but ordinary. Inside, tensions ran high, and emotions were on edge as candidates from all corners of the township jockeyed for position. At the center of the storm was State Senator Napoleon Harris, who also served as the Democratic Committee Chair in Warren Township. Harris, a formidable political figure in his own right, had thrown his hat in the ring for the supervisor role. What unfolded was nothing short of masterful political maneuvering, as Harris orchestrated the entire caucus with the precision of a seasoned strategist. In the end, Harris emerged victorious, securing the Democratic nomination for supervisor and effectively shutting Henyard out of the race. The moment was monumental, but what came next was even more telling. As the results were announced, the crowd didn't erupt in applause for Harris as one might expect. Instead, they jeered and taunted Henyard, with some shouting, "Nah hey hey, kiss him goodbye." It was a moment so charged with political tension that it could only be described as the ultimate political mic drop. For Henyard, this was not just a loss. It was a public humiliation, one that stripped away the last vestiges of her political power. The disqualification, combined with the overwhelming hostility from the crowd, marked the beginning of the end for Henyard's once promising political career. What had started as an ambitious run for re-election quickly turned into a full-scale political collapse, with her supporters left stunned and questioning how it all went so wrong. The fall from grace was swift, and as Henyard reeled from the blow, it was clear that the road ahead would be anything but smooth. The outcome of the caucus was a sharp reminder of just how fragile political fortunes can be, and it signaled a dramatic shift in the power dynamics within Foreign Township. Henyard, once seen as an unstoppable force, had met her match, and the consequences of that fateful day would reverberate for a long time to come.
How the Democratic caucus works right here in Foreign Township. You can also say that she flunked out because her name is not Henyard.
Visibly upset and unable to contain her fury, Tiffany Henyard didn't hold back as she accused Napoleon Harris of orchestrating an illegal process. Shouting, "You didn't run any of this the right way." She pointed fingers at Harris, alleging that the entire caucus was a carefully crafted scheme to oust her from the race. Her words, filled with anger and frustration, echoed through the room, but the tension in the air only grew thicker. As her accusations rang out, Henyard stormed out of the auditorium, her face a mask of disbelief and outrage. A handful of her loyal supporters followed closely behind her. But it was clear the damage had already been done. Outside the auditorium, Henyard continued to vent her frustrations, her political future hanging by a thread. Despite her efforts to challenge the outcome, the reality was undeniable. Her name had been officially removed from the Democratic ballot, sealing her fate in the primary. Her once promising path to re-election had come to a screeching halt. In the aftermath of the disqualification, Henyard's options were painfully limited. The only way for her to remain in the race for the upcoming election was to pursue an unlikely route, running as a write-in candidate. However, this would be no easy feat. A write-in campaign is a grueling uphill battle under any circumstances, and Henyard's prospects seemed increasingly dim. Her political empire had already begun to crumble, and the support she had once enjoyed appeared to be evaporating quickly. Running as a write-in candidate would require an extraordinary amount of effort and dedication, and the odds were stacked against her. The dramatic loss of her spot on the ballot had alienated many of her supporters, leaving her with a fractured base and little time to rebuild. The political machine that once propelled her to power seemed to be falling apart at the seams. For Henyard, the situation was a cruel twist of fate. From the heady days of political dominance to a desperate fight for relevance, her career now faced its most uncertain chapter. A write-in campaign might be her last hope, but it was a long shot, one that would require an extraordinary level of resolve and strategic thinking. The battle for her political survival was far from over, but the road ahead was filled with more questions than answers. Would she be able to rally enough support to mount a successful write-in campaign, or was this the final act in the dramatic downfall of one of Illinois' most controversial figures? The next chapter in her saga would reveal just how far she was willing to go to claw her way back into the race. The loss that Tiffany Henyard suffered during the Foreign Township caucus was not just a political setback. It was a crushing blow to her public image, one that reverberated far beyond the confines of the voting booth. The consequences of her disqualification from the ballot were swift and unforgiving, and critics wasted no time in pouncing on the opportunity to highlight what they saw as yet another glaring example of her unraveling leadership. To many, the defeat served as a clear indication that Henyard's once solid grip on power was weakening, and that the foundation of her political career had begun to crumble. The damage to her reputation was undeniable, and her ability to lead effectively was now under intense scrutiny. In the wake of the debacle, a growing chorus of dissatisfaction began to rise from voters, many of whom took to social media to express their frustration and disillusionment. One particularly vocal resident, emboldened by the unfolding events, urged fellow citizens to take decisive action, writing, "Please vote as early as you can. Make it too big to rig and get her out of there." This call to arms was a direct response to the perceived incompetence and corruption that many believed had plagued Henyard's leadership, and it reflected the increasing sentiment that her time in office had come to an end. The message was clear. Voters were fed up, and they were ready for change. Another online commenter succinctly captured the prevailing mood, stating, "Money and power corrupt." The more power she had, the more corruption followed. This sentiment resonated deeply with a large portion of the public, many of whom viewed Henyard as a symbol of the dangers of unchecked political power. To them, her disqualification from the ballot was a painful but telling reminder of the corrupting influence of power and the need for greater accountability in leadership. As the comment thread continued to grow, it became evident that the frustration with Henyard's leadership was widespread and deeply felt, further fueling the momentum for her removal. The more the story unfolded, the clearer it became that the rift between Henyard and the voters had grown wide and irreparable. Once seen as a rising star in local politics, Henyard now found herself on the defensive, her credibility shattered and her political future uncertain. Public trust in her had plummeted, and the growing dissatisfaction only seemed to deepen with each passing day. Those who had once supported her now felt betrayed, disillusioned by what they saw as her failure to deliver on promises and her increasingly erratic decisions in office. The defeat at the caucus had not just cost Henyard a spot on the ballot. It had exposed the cracks in her leadership and laid bare the widening divide between her and the electorate. Her political downfall was no longer just about losing an election. It was about the loss of public faith in her ability to lead with integrity. With every social media post, every angry comment, and every call for action, it became clearer that Henyard's reign was nearing its end. The forces of frustration, disillusionment, and distrust had coalesced into a potent call for change, one that Henyard could no longer ignore or dismiss. Her downfall was no longer a matter of if, but when. The voters had spoken, and they were ready to take action.
Calls for a change at the top in South Suburban Dalton.
Of course, we are talking about Mayor Tiffany.
To fully grasp the extent of Tiffany Henyard's downfall, it's important to look back at her rise in local politics. Once regarded as a shining star with a seemingly unstoppable career, Henyard crafted an image of herself as the super mayor, a leader capable of handling two high-powered roles simultaneously. Serving as both the mayor of Dalton and the supervisor of Foron Township, she wielded significant influence. However, these positions, which granted her a substantial amount of power, also made her a prime target for scrutiny. Critics quickly began to question her actions, accusing her of putting her personal interests ahead of the needs of the public. Allegations of embezzlement, the mismanagement of taxpayer funds, and questionable spending practices began to surface, signaling the start of what would become a swift unraveling of her once formidable political career. Among the most shocking revelations was Henyard's alleged misuse of public funds. Reports indicated that she had spent thousands of dollars on luxury trips, lavish dinners, and even personal beauty treatments, all of which raised eyebrows in a community where many residents were struggling to make ends meet. Perhaps the most jaw-dropping incident involved Henyard's use of a municipal credit card to charge over $33,000 to Amazon in a single day. This was a staggering amount, especially considering that the median income in Dalton was just $24,000. For many residents, this was the breaking point. "It's a slap in the face," said one local resident. "She's living like a queen while we're struggling to get by. It's disgusting." The revelation not only highlighted Henyard's questionable judgment, but also fueled the growing perception that she was out of touch with the very people she was meant to serve. What was once seen as a political assent was now being viewed as a betrayal, and the anger from the community was palpable. These scandals, once whispered behind closed doors, were now out in the open, and they would go on to define Henyard's political downfall. The public backlash continued to grow as more details emerged, further eroding the trust that had once been the foundation of her political career. The image of the super mayor that Henyard had so carefully crafted was quickly replaced by that of a leader mired in corruption and scandal, a stark reminder of how swiftly a political career can unravel when the public loses faith.
I've said for a while, it's like, grassroots. It was organic when a lot of this things started at the township, where the people were.
The financial mismanagement in Dalton continued to spiral, with each new revelation painting a darker picture of the town's fiscal health. A preliminary investigation, led by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, uncovered disturbing trends that signaled the full extent of the damage. The village's general fund, once boasting a healthy balance of over $5 million in 2022, had plummeted into a staggering deficit of nearly $4 million by mid-2024. Lightfoot, who had been appointed as a special investigator, did not mince words in her assessment, calling the situation dire and placing much of the blame squarely on Henyard's reckless spending. The investigation revealed a series of alarming expenses that further underscored the depth of the mismanagement. Among the most shocking was the revelation of police officer overtime payouts that far exceeded their annual salaries. One officer, for example, had earned over $100,000 in overtime alone, on top of their regular salary. Such excessive payouts raised serious concerns about the village's budgeting practices, with many questioning whether the funds were being allocated responsibly or if the excess was a result of poor planning and financial oversight. These findings painted a grim picture of a town in fiscal disarray, with Henyard at the helm. As the details of the investigation were made public, it became clear that her leadership had played a central role in the town's financial downfall. But her troubles didn't end with financial mismanagement. Her abrasive and autocratic leadership style only compounded the problems. Henyard's tendency to alienate both colleagues and constituents created an environment of hostility and mistrust, further eroding her already fragile political standing. Tensions within the Dalton Village Board grew more pronounced as trustees began to openly criticize Henyard, accusing her of running the town like a dictatorship. Public meetings became battlegrounds, with Henyard often seen berating trustees and dismissing their concerns as irrelevant. At one particularly tense moment, she infamously declared, "You all forget, I'm the leader. They want to hear from the mayor. You all ain't learned that yet. The mayor, not the trustees, that don't do nothing." This remark only fueled the perception that Henyard was not only out of touch with the needs of her colleagues, but also unwilling to collaborate with others in the best interests of the community. Her disregard for dissenting opinions and her apparent refusal to work as part of a team left many questioning her ability to lead effectively. To many, this moment crystallized the growing sense that Henyard had become increasingly isolated in her leadership approach, more focused on maintaining power than on working toward solutions with the people who were supposed to help her govern. As the public and political pressure mounted, Henyard's increasingly authoritarian approach only deepened the divide between her and the residents of Dalton. Rather than uniting the town and addressing its challenges, her leadership had fostered an environment of division, mistrust, and frustration. The anger from residents, once directed toward specific decisions, now became a broader rejection of her style of governance. What had started as a promising political career now seemed destined for an irreparable collapse, with the financial mismanagement and divisive leadership leaving Henyard on the verge of losing both her position and the public's confidence entirely.
We're waiting for Mayor Henyard to arrive. We'll give another 5 minutes.
Mayor Tiffany Henyard delayed the meeting with no.
Tiffany Henyard's troubles have escalated dramatically as she finds herself embroiled in a legal dispute with the Doughton Park District, a conflict that has only deepened the growing sense of dysfunction surrounding her leadership. The Park District has accused Henyard of deliberately withholding crucial permits needed for essential park improvements, causing several important projects, funded by sizable grants, to be stalled indefinitely. These projects, which were designed to enhance local public spaces and improve the quality of life for residents, are now languishing in limbo due to Henyard's refusal to issue the necessary approvals. In addition to the delays, Park District officials have gone a step further, accusing Henyard of politically motivated actions. They allege that she is deliberately targeting the district for allowing her political opponents to hold meetings on district property, something they believe has put them squarely in her crosshairs. The accusation that Henyard's decisions are driven more by personal grudges than by public service only adds to the mounting list of criticisms against her administration. Together, these controversies paint a troubling picture of a leadership style increasingly focused on settling personal scores, rather than on serving the needs of the community. This legal clash with the Park District highlights growing concerns that Henyard's administration may be fueled more by political motivations and personal grievances than by the welfare of the people she was elected to serve. The situation reveals a troubling trend. Rather than prioritizing the development and improvement of public spaces, Henyard's actions appear to be motivated by an agenda that has little to do with the needs of Dalton's residents. Beyond the specific issue of permits, more reports have surfaced that suggest Henyard's administration is engaging in what many see as politically charged tactics. The Park District has been issued thousands of dollars in citations for minor, routine maintenance activities that had never previously been questioned. Tasks like spreading mulch on playgrounds and installing new equipment, basic upkeep that had been carried out for years without incident, are now being scrutinized and fined with no clear explanation for why these activities have suddenly become a point of contention. Critics of Henyard's actions have characterized these moves as petty and vindictive, suggesting that they are part of a broader pattern of targeting the Park District for political reasons, rather than addressing any legitimate concerns or violations. These critics argue that Henyard's administration is engaging in unnecessary and politically motivated interference with the district's ability to operate smoothly. Cleo Jones, president of the Doden Park District, expressed her frustration with the ongoing situation. Every year, we replenish the mulch in the park to ensure the kids are playing on a safe, healthy surface, she said. This is a routine maintenance task that we've always carried out without controversy. Now we're being punished for it because of political games. Jones's comments reflect the growing sense of injustice among Park District officials, who feel that their ability to serve the community is being hindered by Henyard's relentless and seemingly personal interference. This dispute has also sparked concern among local residents, many of whom are already frustrated by the lack of progress on public amenities. The ongoing delays in much-needed improvements to local parks and other public spaces have left many questioning whether Henyard's leadership is truly focused on their well-being. With important projects stalled and basic services compromised, the public's dissatisfaction is growing. Residents are becoming increasingly vocal in their criticism of Henyard, expressing frustration that the focus of her administration seems to be on political conflicts rather than on addressing the pressing needs of the community. As important initiatives remain on hold and quality of life suffers, many are beginning to wonder whether Henyard is genuinely invested in the best interests of the people she represents, or whether her actions are driven more by personal agendas and power struggles. The situation surrounding the Doden Park District only deepens the perception that Henyard's leadership has become increasingly dysfunctional and disconnected from the community she was elected to serve. What was once seen as a promising political career is now being defined by legal battles, political infighting, and a growing chorus of disillusioned residents. The question remains, can Henyard shift her focus back to the needs of the community, or has her administration become so mired in personal vendettas that it can no longer effectively govern?
7 minutes. That's all it took for Tiffany Henyard to be out as the Democratic nominee for Thornton Township Supervisor, and she left here visibly upset.
The financial stakes in the ongoing feud between Tiffany Henyard and the Doden Park District are becoming increasingly dire, with potentially far-reaching consequences for both the local government and the community. A critical $40,000 grant, designated for the rehabilitation of Blackstone Park, is now on the brink of expiring due to the delays in securing the necessary permits, delays that Henyard's administration is accused of causing. The expiration of this grant could force taxpayers to absorb the costs of funds already spent, as the grant may no longer be accessible to complete the project. What was meant to be an investment in improving local parks and creating safe, welcoming spaces for families now risks becoming a financial and developmental setback for the town. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about missed opportunities, said Stephanie Weidman, the Park District's executive director. If these grants expire, our residents lose out on improved parks and safe spaces for their families. Weidman's comments underscore the gravity of the situation, which has now evolved from a political dispute to a matter of community well-being. The delay in securing permits isn't just preventing progress. It's threatening to rob the residents of Dalton of vital upgrades to their public spaces. The tensions between Henyard and the Park District have reached a point where they are actively harming the very community that Henyard was elected to serve. This ongoing standoff is a glaring reflection of Henyard's leadership style, one that is marked by confrontation, control, and an unwillingness to collaborate. Her approach has only deepened divisions within the community, creating a rift between her administration and the institutions meant to help improve local life. The damage caused by her political infighting is now visible in the stalled projects, wasted opportunities, and growing frustration among residents who feel their needs are being sidelined by a petty power struggle. At the same time, Henyard's inner circle, once a pillar of support, is beginning to show signs of significant strain. Longtime allies have started to distance themselves from her, and rumors of staff resignations and internal turmoil are circulating through the political grapevine. The cracks in her political foundation, once subtle, have now become undeniable, and Henyard's future in office is increasingly in doubt. What was once seen as a tightly controlled administration is now unraveling before the public's eyes, with former supporters quietly backing away and a sense of instability growing in the ranks. As her political base weakens, Henyard has made attempts at damage control, trying to reframe the narrative and restore her image by hosting community events and making media appearances. However, these efforts have largely backfired, with critics labeling her actions as desperate and insincere. What was intended to be a show of outreach and accountability has instead been seen as a clumsy attempt to salvage her reputation in the face of mounting scandals. Far from winning back public support, Henyard's media blitz and public appearances have only reinforced the perception that she is out of touch with the real issues facing the community. Rather than restoring trust, Henyard's actions have further eroded her credibility. Residents and critics alike see these efforts as nothing more than political theater, attempts to regain control in a situation that is quickly slipping beyond her grasp. The more she tries to spin the narrative, the more she alienates those who are already disillusioned with her leadership. The genuine desire for change and the increasing belief that Henyard's leadership is no longer serving the best interests of the community is only growing stronger. With each passing day, Henyard's position in office grows more tenuous. The ongoing standoff over the park permits, combined with the broader financial mismanagement and mounting allegations against her, has put her on the defensive. Her attempts to recover politically have failed to quell the rising tide of dissatisfaction, and it is becoming clear that her grip on power is slipping. The cracks in her political foundation are no longer small fractures. They are chasms that threaten to swallow her entire political career. The question now is whether she can manage to hold on to her office for much longer, or if her downfall is inevitable, as her fractured administration and eroding public support leave her future in doubt.
Plan to win, but let's do it properly and let the people really have a voice. The people's voice was taken.
Perhaps the most damaging blow to Tiffany Henyard's political career came from the FBI, which launched an investigation into her administration. Several individuals have reportedly spoken to agents about potential misconduct, and while no formal charges have been filed against Henyard directly, the mere existence of the investigation has cast a long shadow over her leadership. The uncertainty surrounding the probe has only added to the growing pressure she's facing, intensifying public skepticism about her ability to govern. The situation worsened when one of Henyard's closest allies, a former deputy police chief, was recently indicted on charges of bankruptcy fraud. This development has become yet another point of attack for Henyard's opponents, who have wasted no time in using the indictment to rally support for her removal. The timing could not have been worse, as the public perception of Henyard is now further tainted by the scandal surrounding one of her key allies. As the pressure on her mounts, Henyard has remained defiant, continuing to push back against the mounting criticism. In a recent Facebook video, she lashed out at her critics, accusing them of orchestrating a smear campaign against her. "Why is all this attention on me? What are they trying to distract you from?" she asked in a tone that was both defensive and combative. She also hinted at pursuing legal action against those she believes have wronged her, though it remains unclear if she has any concrete evidence to back up her claims. The video did little to calm the storm, with many interpreting it as a desperate attempt to shift blame and deflect attention from the growing list of allegations. Meanwhile, the financial stakes of Henyard's leadership continue to escalate. A $40,000 grant meant to rehabilitate Blackstone Park is now on the verge of expiring due to delays in securing the necessary permits, potentially leaving taxpayers responsible for funds that have already been spent. This grant was intended to improve public parks and create safe spaces for families, but now it is at risk of being lost entirely. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about missed opportunities, said Stephanie Weedman, the Park District's executive director. If these grants expire, our residents lose out on improved parks and safe spaces for their families. This ongoing feud with the Park District is a clear reflection of Henyard's leadership style. which is increasingly characterized by confrontation, control, and a refusal to collaborate. Rather than working with the Park District to resolve the issue, Henyard's actions have deepened divisions within the community, with many residents now questioning her ability to effectively lead. Her focus on personal vendettas and political infighting has come at the expense of public service, and the mounting consequences of these decisions are now being felt by the very people she was elected to serve. As Henyard's inner circle begins to splinter, longtime allies are distancing themselves from her, and rumors of staff resignations and internal turmoil continue to circulate. The cracks in her political foundation are becoming undeniable, and her once solid support base appears to be crumbling. With every passing day, it's becoming more evident that her hold on power is slipping. Her future in office now looks increasingly uncertain, and the public's confidence in her ability to govern is quickly eroding. Even Henyard's attempts at damage control, such as hosting community events and making media appearances, have only backfired. Critics have labeled these efforts as desperate and insincere, further diminishing her support. What she likely hoped would be a way to reassert control over the narrative has instead highlighted her growing isolation and lack of genuine connection with the community. As her political empire unravels, it seems clear that Henyard's once promising career is now teetering on the edge of collapse.